Where else to start? At the top, the team that probably made the most noise at this draft is Tennessee Titans, headlined by Treylon Burks, Roger McCreary, and Malik Willis at quarterback in the mid rounds. This draft was interesting for the Tennessee Titans with the trade of A.J. Brown to the Eagles, then replacing him with Treylon Burks. I feel like that's where we got to start, gentlemen. Aaron, what were your overall thoughts on Titans draft, including the massive trade that sent A.J. Brown to the Eagles?
Yeah, it started there. The trade was very perplexing. We talked about it on draft night. We've talked about it since then. You're trading a talent like A.J. Brown, who's been highly productive in that offense in a limited role, really, when you talk about their offense being so heavily relied upon Derrick Henry in that play action game. He doesn't see the targets some of the top receivers see in the NFL. And then you get a guy that's that productive, and then all of a sudden you decide to trade him because you don't want to pay him. And regardless of what the Tennessee Titans front office is saying about how there were some things they, didn't work out and they wanted to give him the money, but they couldn't. I don't buy it. I think it was a matter of them saying, you know what, we don't want to pay this receiver this money, and we're going to go out and we're going to draft one of these guys that we feel like can come in and do the things that A.J. Brown does for far less cheaper. And to me, that was a big mistake. Look, I'm not saying Treylon Burks is not a guy who can't come in and play in the NFL or be a good receiver, but he's unproven, where A.J. Brown has already proven. Treylon Burks played in an offense in Arkansas. He's only really been productive for one season. This is not a guy that has come out and been shining for 3 years in the SEC. It's been really one really solid year. And then we're like hoping he turns into A.J. Brown 2.0, which A.J. has said a number of times. Why not just stick with the guy you already have in a team that won the AFC last year? You don't have time to wait for Treylon Burks to adjust and develop into an NFL receiver. Who's to say he's going to come in right away and understand route concepts, understand this play action game, understand these option routes that they have to run? We don't know that he's going to come in right away and have that impact. I just felt overall Tennessee was kind of, I don't like using this word because they're smart guys there. They were kind of clueless. They didn't look like they had a plan, and it looked like every pick, everything that happened on draft night, and since then, Mike Vrabel hasn't looked happy, and that front office doesn't look like they knew what this was going to happen, and they looked confused. And to me, that's just bad business for an NFL organization that doesn't have an idea of what they are going to do going into such a big event.
Yeah. You and I have the grade on the Treylon Burks pick. You have it at a B. I have it at a B minus. AJ, you have it at an A minus. What went into your thought process on grading the Treylon Burks pick? Did you think about the A.J. Brown trade at all, or was this purely on Treylon Burks?
No, I actually thought about this a lot and everything when it came to the Titans. And the fact of the matter is, you traded away A.J. Brown. You now have, even with Robert Woods coming in, you now have an immediate need at the position. And they went out and got a guy that, while there's still questions, at that point of the draft, the receivers that were left that could go in the first round, we're going to have questions anyways. So you had an immediate need, and you went ahead and you got it. You got a guy who you hope you can teach to do some of the things A.J. Brown did. Now, you're also hoping that he possesses some of the traits that you can never teach a football player to have. That's just instinct. That's just God-given talent, and you're hoping Treylon Burks can bring that along. So I gave him an A- because they had the need. They went out and got it. And, we talked about the Titans draft a lot. And while we talked about how the Titans were losing the offseason, looking back at this draft, I don't think it's as bad as we kind of let on for it to be. Don't get me wrong. It's not great. You can tell that, like Aaron said, the Vrabel wasn't happy. The front office looked confused. There's reasons that this wasn't a great draft, but it's not as bad as we say it was. And I think we did that because of the A.J. Brown trade. Losing a piece like that hurts. I think the other thing about this draft that has really started to come apparent is that Ryan Tannehill, his days are numbered. And that can be said by the Malik Willis trade or the Malik Willis draft when we got him in the third round. Now, of course, Tannehill's probably still going to play this season. Tannehill may play next season, but there's also a really good chance that Malik Willis shows why a lot of people were chirping about him going in the first round. He has the measurables. He has the athletic profile. He has a beautiful deep ball. He can play the game. He just has to learn it. This is a guy who put up 47 touchdowns and over 5,000 yards when he was finally given the chance. Sure, it was at Liberty, but he also put them on a national scale. So looking at Malik Willis, looking at Treylon Burks, it's very sad and very confusing that a team that was first in the division you could seriously talk about as if they are looking like they're going to be in a rebuild, if not this season, next season. That's kind of where I stand on the Titans as a whole for right now.
Yeah, so with that Malik Willis pick, though, I mean, like, this draft, I mean, coming into this draft, we were thinking, okay, the Tennessee Titans, and I'm pretty sure we all said it. I know I definitely said it before the draft. I was like, okay, this Titans draft has to be a draft where we see them getting picks so they can compete in a very tough AFC, whereas everything else, it seemed like, or all the actual picks were them looking forward and moving forward and building towards the future rather than living in the now, including the Malik Willis pick. Aaron, what were your overall thoughts on the Titans draft, not just including now the Treylon Burks pick, but everything else?
Yeah, I kind of disagree with AJ. I don't really like it. I wasn't overly enthused with some of their picks. The Roger McCreary pick kind of confused me. I thought there were better defensive backs there at that time. I believe he was taken 35th overall. I thought there were better defensive backs there at that time. And then also the Nicholas Petit-Frere pick, it's about where I expected him to go. I thought they would look more for somebody that can play inside a little bit better. They don't really have any guard depth. I thought they might want to go there. Maybe he can move inside, but he's more of a traditional tackle. And then the Malik Willis pick. Look, I think they just went value there. I don't think they had an idea of coming in and taking a quarterback because I don't think they thought Malik Willis would drop that far. So the fact that he did and they snatched him up, to me, it was more like, hey, let's get some value here for a position that we may be looking to replace in the next year or so. So I thought that pick was good. I did think that was a good spot to take him at, but they had so many other holes that I don't think they filled. We talked about the linebacker position. They waited until the 7th round, which I actually thought it was, or the 6th round, which I actually thought they got a decent player in a Chance Campbell, but they still have to worry about that linebacker depth. They have some offensive line issues. Edge rusher still an issue for them. Trying to get to the quarterback is going to be a problem. I felt like in the middle, they went from saying, you know what, we're contenders this year to saying, let's play for the future. I thought that with the Malik Willis pick. I thought that with the Treylon Burks pick after the trade. And I thought that with the Hassan Haskins pick, trying to replace perhaps a Derrick Henry in a few years. I thought they switched up their plan and they no longer were saying we can win now. They were saying we are playing for the future.
I wanted to just clear some things up. Aaron, you did say a lot of wonderful, fantastic things. I'll probably address a few of them and forget some of the ones that I meant to. I guess what I'm really saying about their draft as a whole, right about the Hassan Haskins pick, like you kind of just mentioned in the middle, is where I start to go off kilter on their draft. Everything else above that, I'm a fan of. When it comes to Roger McCreary, while you can look at a Kyler Gordon, I know you love Andrew Booth, and I do think he's going to be good. I don't think he's as good as some people had him in this draft. I like Roger McCreary for this squad. They have the guys like Caleb Farley, who's a playmaker on the ball. Now they get a Roger McCreary who can be physical, who's lengthy to an extent, and can have some good ball skills here and there. You can't always measure, and I know you know this, you can't always measure the talent of a quarterback by numbers in production, because if you're a good enough quarterback, your numbers may look low because quarterbacks know better. Speaking of quarterbacks, we talked about Malik Willis falling because everybody had him in the first round. But when you really sit back and think about it, being drafted in the 3rd round of the NFL, it's a very impressive feat. We're talking about 600 plus FBS colleges in 32 NFL teams. Some people never sniffed the NFL, and we're talking about a quarterback that got drafted in one of the prime rounds of the NFL, and Malik Willis. I also don't think they planned on getting a quarterback, but we talked about this before the draft. We thought they were a prime team to go out and grab a quarterback if the value was sitting there, and I don't think they could have gotten a better value knowing they had a guy in place in Ryan Tannehill that can take their team this year, and then getting a Malik Willis to be ready to come in and possibly take their franchise to the next step when the time comes. So that's kind of clear up where my thoughts were when I say a good draft and liking the pick of Malik Willis. I'm slightly confused on Hassan Haskins, but that could be for another day.
I like Hassan Haskins as a running back. I like him as a player. It's just, again, with this, I think we have to now just pivot like how we're judging now the Tennessee Titans. Like, we can't judge the Titans now on wanting to compete in the AFC. Maybe Titans fans are going to comment on this YouTube clip and say, oh, we're still in it. I don't know how we're not in it because we still have a good defense and where we were at last year or whatever. But maybe we have to start looking at this draft and as what, take it as what it is. It's
But
moving
that's what I
towards
mean.
the future. Yeah.
But
It's
that's what I
moving
mean.
towards
Like,
the future.
why they just won the AFC last year. Like, they won the AFC in the regular season. They were the #1 seed without Derrick Henry for the major part of that season. Why do you go and trade AJ Brown? Why do you then all of a sudden shift this focus? To me, it's like everybody else went out and did so much in free agency. The Tennessee Titans looked at the roster and said, oh yeah, last year was a fluke. We're not going to be able to do this again because we couldn't even get it done in the playoffs. That's what I feel. I feel like they don't even believe in their own squad. And to me, after being the #1 seed in the AFC, that's a shame. Like to just allow a player like AJ Brown, and it started there. And I think obviously that's what rippled into the draft. But this is the same team that, again, #1 seed. 2 years ago, you pay Ryan Tannehill, and now all of a sudden, I don't believe in this team anymore. That's what it shows me. It shows me that they really don't believe in the talent they have on that roster.
Do you guys think they should have or could have gotten more for AJ Brown? That pick right there, and then the 101 pick in this year's draft is all they got for AJ Brown.
No, probably not, because of the money that a team was going to have to pay. So you look at the outside of like Tyreek Hill, who's proven a lot more in this league, Devontae Adams, like those guys have been the top level receivers. Having to pay that receiver $25 million a year is part of that compensation we have to take into consideration. So they don't have to pay that 25. They still get the first round pick and then an extra pick on top. It's about what you would pay for a guy like that, because they also think Treylon Burks is going to be that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So again, it's just a matter of, do we really believe that Treylon Burks is going to come in and have that impact that AJ Brown has? I'm sorry. I don't see it. Out of all the receivers that came in the first round that went, we're talking Jameson, even Chris Olave, like Treylon Burks is to me a very bust candidate. He's a big time bust candidate for me, especially in that offense. Yeah, poor Tennessee fans. Poor Tennessee fans.
Tennessee listens to the Sac City pod. They knew it was a fluke.
Hey, we've been calling it for a year now. Like, this team is not as good as their record showed last year. They weren't as talented as the #1 seed in the AFC. And this is going to take a huge step back for them as the AFC only gets stronger and they're getting weaker.
Yep. Just a little hypothetical here. Just entertain me here. We saw the New Orleans Saints trade up with I believe their original trade was with the Commanders, right? To select Chris Olave. And then they ended up trading back even further. But if you're the Tennessee Titans, would you have Washington Commanders trade for AJ Brown, give up that first round pick, and then you go up and get a Chris Olave instead of Treylon Burks? But I know that you're not a fan of Chris Olave. So.
Can I be honest? What Tennessee did, I don't have a problem with. If they traded AJ Brown, that's the route they were going to go. I don't have a problem with it. I don't think you draft Treylon Burks there. This is what I remember when I said you give up a hole and then you feel the need to get that hole right then and there. So you give up your receiver, so you draft the receiver. I would have rather had them take the best available player in a different position and then spend a later draft pick on a receiver and say, that's who we're going to look to fill that void. We've already addressed it with Robert Woods. We got Austin Hooper in the offseason. Maybe we like Westbrook Akina a little bit. That way, everything Treylon Burks does now, guess what? It's going to be compared to AJ Brown. And it's going to put more and more pressure on him to be great. And I'm not saying he can't, but that's so much harder as a player. I just think I would have gone a different route, because all I see, and I can't get rid of it, is Treylon Burks has to be AJ Brown or better, or I'm going to be like, you lost. Simple as that.
Yep. It is unfortunate. It's unfortunate. Titans fans, let us know what you think in the comments below. Let's take a look at the overall results of our draft grades. The GPAs for these teams looks like this. The Tennessee Titans with the lowest at 2.79, which is still that is still passing. That is still a passing GPA. That I would know, because it's pretty damn close to what I got at Full Sail to graduate. Then the Colts at 3.17. Then you got the Texans at 3.65. And the Jacksonville Jaguars at 3.35. I mean, that Texans grade, very, very high. Might be the highest.
It speaks to the depth. It speaks to the depth. I believe their first 5 or 6 picks, we all had high A's all the way to high B's as far as their grades. So they had a really, really deep draft. Really impressed with what they did. But like I said, to me, the winner of the division was still Jacksonville. I believe I had them pretty close side by side, but to me, Jacksonville, the top end of the draft, just was super impressive to me. And you know, I'm a big fan of Trayvon Walker, and I think he's going to be a game changer on that defensive side of the football for them.
I think that, so I'm looking back at the statistics here, and based on our GPAs, the Houston Texans are the highest graded team in our draft at that 3.65. They just edged out the Seattle Seahawks, who were at 3.52. So that is the highest grade that we have given out. That's also including the teams that are to be released on YouTube tomorrow, which you guys will have to be locked in the Sac City Pod on YouTube